Thank you for coming on. And
Thank you for having me.
so, Jana Renner is
Mhm.
from the Rise Health Coaching Substack, and you're a holistic nutrition coach, correct?
Yes, I'm a health
Yeah.
and nutrition coach. So I have a certification in health coaching specifically from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, but I also have a couple of certifications specifically in nutrition as well.
Yeah. And you were explaining to me, we got in touch through the Lemon Tree Mindset
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
collaboration, and a big thing about Substack is collaboration, and I really like that sort of it's
Yeah, I
not
do too.
competitive, it's collaboration stuff. And
Hmm.
um my Substack, the recomp journey in particular, was about not just my nutrition and fitness journey, but I have been going through trying to lose weight. And my father had a lot of health problems and things like
Hmm.
that. I'm a 90s kid, I'm a millennial. We've had totally bad examples. There
For
was no
sure.
such thing as body
Mhm.
positivity until the last, like,
Oh my
maybe
god.
15 years. So
No,
it's a lot of
for sure.
information out there. So I wanted to put actual correct information as much as possible.
Of
And
course.
when it was an idea of collaborating with people for the recomp journey, I was like, you could keep hearing about my journey, but I'm only one body. You can't
Right.
just do exactly what I do. So I wanted to continue to collaborate with others. So you also explain,
Mhm.
you work with athletes, you work with families or children, things like that. Can you kind of explain that a little bit more?
Sure. So the path I've sort of taken to get here is a little circuitous, but I am the co-owner of a CrossFit gym as well. And that's sort of how I
I love
got
it.
into it's sort of how I got into nutrition. But I was a member at this gym prior to purchasing it in during quarantine and COVID. And I'd always been interested in fitness. I was a long distance runner for a long time and I was a college soccer player. And
Mm.
I had just started to learn about nutrition on my own prior to the gym purchase even being a possibility. I just was interested in it. It felt like sort of the missing piece in my own personal training. So I had sort of gone down that path, but I really enjoy the sort of, I would say, detective or mystery of solving people's individual habits and how it works to their health journey and their nutrition and trying to implement those for them. I think that to your point, there was no information when we were younger, and it was definitely not from a positivity standpoint. I'm sure I'm a little
Right.
bit older than you, but now there's so much information, and how do you weed through it to see what applies to you, what's valid, what's useful, what's not just for shock value, but what actually makes sense for your own journey? So it was really important for me to kind of figure that out, but I do coach a broad spectrum of people. I coach a lot of people for weight loss, of course. That tends to be people's impetus in a lot of ways for nutrition. I have and continue to coach people with chronic conditions. And I do coach a lot of athletes, adults and teenagers as well,
Yeah.
actually. Some for body recomposition and some for performance. It just depends. So it's pretty broad spectrum in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And a big thing, I know, like, whenever they do behind the scenes of, like, how did such and such actor get ready for the role of some superhero movie and stuff, it's a
Hmm.
lot about their exercise routine. But I was
Hmm.
like, isn't it 90? Well, particularly in those superhero ones, like probably 99% nutrition. But for athletes
Hmm.
and general health, it's really the nutrition because it's the fuel to the body. And we don't really talk about it enough, I think.
I think we don't talk about it enough because it really opens our eyes to the choices that we make by talking about it, to be quite honest.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it really makes us self-aware, which sometimes or self-evaluate, which sometimes isn't something that we necessarily want to do because it forces us to admit things that we know we should be doing or shouldn't be doing
Yeah.
or whatever. But no, to your point, I think that's really true. When you look at things, people often look at like, well, I need to work out more, I need to do this more. But the reality is if you work a regular job or have a normal life, your workout on a good week on a good week is unless you're a professional athlete or you're in a very high peak season of training for something, is maybe 5 hours of dedicated
Mm,
specific exercise a week, right?
yeah.
You eat the entire rest of the week. so,
Yeah, yeah.
so your intake is a much larger portion of your health and nutrition journey than your actual deliberate physical activity.
Yeah. And when we started chatting and saying let's collaborate,
Hmm.
we were like, there's so many different routes we can discuss because
Oh, ad
the
nauseum.
athletic part. I lived on uh, Phuket's fitness streets, and I was surrounded by
Oh,
athletes. I
oh wow.
myself am not really an athlete, but I have definitely been a gym rat. I love
Hmm.
CrossFit. I don't think I'm an athlete. Big thing is I'm not a competitive person, and I
Hmm.
used to be like my mom wanted me to be athletic so that I don't fall in like the trap that my dad unfortunately did. But
Hmm.
when I would be like in basketball and stuff, I'm like, "Why are you in my face? Just ask nicely and I'll give you the ball." And they're like, "That's not the point." um, and
So funny.
so I was just not a great. Yeah, I was like or like soccer. I'm like, ugh, we have to go run back that way again. And I definitely
We
don't like
just came
watching
from that
sports.
direction. We just came
Yeah,
from that
watching
direction.
sports is I catch up on a lot of reading during the Olympics, and I'm like, "I'm sure you're all very healthy and your moms are very proud of you." But I just have no interest. However, I do
So funny.
love getting active, right? So
Hmm.
and one of my favorites is boxing and kickboxing, and I learned Muay Thai. And when I
Oh, that's
talked
so
to
funny.
the athletes that are Muay Thai fighters and
Hmm.
boxers, and they would be my trainers, they're like, "It
Hmm.
makes sense because it's not a competitive you're not competitive against the other opponent, you're competitive against yourself. You want to better
Hmm.
yourself.
Hmm.
It's not about beating the other person." And I was like, "Then that does make sense why I really love it so much." But either way, so we were like, "Should we talk about that? Should we talk about just nutrition? Should we talk about that?" We decided that we're gonna focus more on, okay, we're in summer,
Hmm.
and a big thing is, trying to stay health conscious and a good diet even during times of vacation, right?
Right.
You're going on vacation, and I have been,
Yes.
I'm a nomad, and I've been living across the globe for over 5 years now. And even during my whole journey, and I continue to lose weight. Sometimes I plateau, sometimes I've
Hmm.
gained weight, but I generally stay really healthy despite all of the places that I've lived in. And so we were going to kind of focus on that and explain you can stay health conscious. And it's not like a cheat week when you're on a week long vacation kind of thing.
Right. I mean, I think there's a couple of different mindsets that come into play when it comes to travel. But I do have to say something really quick. Most people don't know anything about Muay Thai, and my son competes at Muay Thai.
Oh, yeah. I have a
So
whole
that's such a
blog post
small
about it.
world. It's so funny. Yeah, he just started like a little over a year ago. Now he will tell you he's definitely trying to beat the other person, but he is competing in tournaments, so it's a little bit different.
It's a little
But
bit
that's so
different, but the
funny.
whole mindset and yeah, and I got so
Oh, for
into
sure.
it. I have a whole blog post on the recon journey about the history between Western boxing and Muay Thai because I got
Oh, I'm
so
definitely gonna
into
go
it.
check that out. I do a
Yeah.
little bit of boxing, but just recreationally as something extra to do because I enjoy it. But no, that's super awesome. I think that's one of the bigger differences you find as you travel down the road of the differences between an individual sport and a team sport.
Yeah.
When I race, it seems like that. When I race, I'm just trying to beat my time. It's nice if I beat other people, but I'm trying to beat my time personally.
Yeah.
When you play on a team sport, you are trying to beat the other people a lot. We could do this all day. But no, to go back to what you were saying to talk about traveling and stuff, I think there's a couple different mindsets about it. I think because you are somebody that travels all the time, you have to have a very consistent approach to it. And
Mhm.
consistent isn't perfect. I think that's where a lot of people get really derailed. They see the idea of consistent or the idea of discipline as some of these Instagram reels we see where you get up at 4 a.m. and you have a 30
Yeah.
part morning routine and you have to like as a girl shed all of these things that you have now slept in to try to make yourself look better in the morning.
Yeah.
And like there's so many And they're like, "Who are you sleeping next to? Good Lord." It's be
I
terrifying. All these things. And that is the far extreme, right? The idea of discipline and consistency is really falls more to the 80-20 rule, in my general opinion, because that's something that you can live with. Trying to hit 100% of anything is just going to have an adverse effect on your health, honestly, because it's going to create so much stress. And it's going to create stress around something that's supposed to be positive and then make it a negative. That's certainly not what we want to do. When we travel, I like the idea of this is just the approach that I take. Now, I'm not a nomad, so I travel, maybe if I'm lucky, half a dozen times a year. And some of those are just weekend trips. Some of those are relatively local. Um, Maybe internationally once a year. So in July, we are headed to Scotland. I have a brother that lives in London, so we will be in London for a few days as well, and I will see him. And my approach to travel is to try to keep as many of my little train cars that I do normally throughout the day on the track, but not to be super upset if we lose the caboose every now and then.
yeah.
So what that means for me and what I think it means for a lot of my clients, and I have talked to them about this all the time too, is that you want to enjoy life. The idea of being healthy is the ability to go out and do things. And again, it's not supposed to be a situation where we are trying to cause extra stress or not be able to enjoy something because we are so concerned about having to check very specific boxes or having to limit very specific things. Like I said, we're doing these things to keep ourselves healthy, to be able to experience life. So I don't track food while I'm on vacation. I don't have clients track food while they're on vacation.
Mm.
Even clients that I have that are particularly on a very specific body composition journey, I don't particularly have them. If it's something like they're going to be gone for a month at a time, then obviously we're
Yeah.
going to change some goals. We're going to come up with something. But I don't have them specifically track food while they are on vacation. I'll be gone for 10 days. Yeah, 9 or 10 days. The traveling overnight always kind of throws me off. Like, does that count as being gone or does that just count as being in the airplane? So I will do a couple things that I try to stick hard to. And this is what I suggest for clients, even, which is one thing. And this is the most important thing to me, I think, is that it's very hard for people to find protein sources when they travel or to
Yeah.
think about it, right? So, like, it's very easy to find fat and carbs. I can find a donut on any place I want a donut. Like,
Right.
even places I don't want a donut, can 100% find a donut. Since I'm talking about going to Europe, I'm pretty sure I can find a croissant anywhere that I go, okay? So we'll just use that as an example. Even in the UK, I'm not even going to France. But so I think that I try to focus hardcore on making sure that I sort of front load my protein, if that makes sense. So I try to, anytime that I'm sitting at a sit down restaurant, my first thought is, what protein am I going to have? How can I work the rest of this meal around that? And that's not to say that I'm not going to have other unhealthy things, but I'm going to make sure that I get some kind of relatively lean protein source. I also try, if it's been a day where I've had a lot of, let's say, treats, I try to eat that first in hopes that I'll be a little bit too full to
Yeah.
eat all the other fun stuff that maybe somebody else ordered that I really want to try, right? But I'm not particularly limiting. If there's something that I want, then I'm going to try it just within reason. That's my main thing as far as eating out goes, this from a strategy perspective. As far as actually traveling in the airport, I have several clients that travel a lot for work. And so we talk about things. I mean, I even have meals mapped out from different fast food type restaurants that are in airports, just so I'm like, okay, here's something I know
Nice.
that you can get that has 50 grams of protein. I don't think that you'll get some nutrition coaches that'll want you to eat clean all the time. And I just don't think that falls under the idea of realism. It doesn't, or the idea
It's
of,
difficult.
yeah, or the idea of not being stressed constantly. And one of my, because I do coach kids, is the idea of not making people afraid of foods. I don't think there's any bad food. I think there's regular foods that we eat regularly, and there are sometimes food, or there's food that has a particular purpose. I ran an ultra trail race in January, and I took a picture of all the food I ate as snacks over the course of 37 miles. And one of the things I ate, or drank, I guess, was one of those mini cans of cherry Coke. And
Oh,
I got a lot of flack for it. And I was like, you have to understand that, like, my body needs the quickest sugar humanly possible and a
and
tiny bit of
it's true.
caffeine.
Yeah,
My body
you'll
does
get
not
it.
have time. My body does not have time to break anything down. I need it readily available. So there's food serves a purpose. It just depends on what it is. I don't think it's good or bad necessarily. So I try to think about protein sources while you're traveling. Also trying to make sure that you still get a couple of servings of vegetables. And if you can kind of stick
That's
to those
perfect.
for meals, you're pretty much going to be okay. It's going to sort of filter out some other choices that you possibly would have made. So if you can kind of stick to those, that's pretty good. As far as like airports and actually carrying snacks or things that can go through security, I do like protein bars, but you got to make sure it's like a real protein bar and not a candy
Yeah,
bar that's disguised as a protein bar.
so true.
Without the risk of getting too scientific, if the biggest macro in the bar isn't protein, it's not a protein bar. It's a fat bar or it's a carb bar. Like the biggest thing in it, or at least equal to something else, needs to be the amount of protein in it. Um, Otherwise, I was at, so I have an athlete that I train and he sent me a picture of a protein bar from Sam's Club, I think, and it was a
Hmm,
Gatorade protein bar. Now you have to
okay.
understand that this is a kid that needs as many calories as humanly possible. So in this scenario, it's not a terrible idea. It's just a matter of being aware. Just like we talked about, tracking creates awareness. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's
Yeah.
unfortunate. So in this case, it's fine because this is a high school boy that plays football that we were trying to put muscle on. So we're
Okay.
trying to get as many calories in him and efficiently as possible, right? He flipped it over, this Gatorade protein bar, and the protein bar had 20 grams of protein, but it also had almost 20 grams of fat. So if you are somebody that is trying to be in a calorie deficit, this is a lot of calories dedicated to
Yeah.
not the thing that you are particularly seeking. And
Yeah,
like I
yeah,
said, for
yeah.
him, it's fine in this scenario, but for most people, that's not what I want to
It
waste
defeats the
my
purpose.
fat on. Yes, exactly. I'd rather go back to the croissant like, if you're going to give me the
Yeah.
option. So trying to be smart and actually read our labels is a big important thing. But trying to find protein sources in the airport are things like you can pretty much always find Greek yogurt. You can always find a Fairlife shake at this point has become so readily available. I think those core protein ones, those are pretty good because they're basically just made from ultra pasteurized milk or ultra filtered milk. They don't have
Mhm.
whey protein in them, so they're usually easier on your tummy. A lot of times you can find things like hard boiled eggs. I'll be the first person to admit that I'm not going to eat a hard boiled egg from a gas station. Maybe other people are braver than me, but
I've done
but
it. I've done it.
there's some of them look fine and some of them don't. It really just depends on where you are. I've definitely bought them in the airport from like the snack bars because I figured those are cycled through pretty quickly.
Oh, sorry,
But you
not
can
the
definitely
gas
get
station. Yes, at the
yeah at the
airport,
airport
yes.
for sure. But sometimes you'll see them at gas stations, and I'm like.
Mm,
But the little cottage cheese cups, the Greek yogurt cups, those
yeah,
Chomps meat sticks, turkey jerky is
yeah,
great. For protein bars, I like the barbells or the ones I can seem to find readily available the most that don't have too much other stuff in them. And if you need something to keep you busy, like airplane snacks, one of my favorite airplane snacks is sparkling water and popcorn because it's such a good fidget snack. You get a lot of you get a lot of bites out of popcorn for very little calories, so it keeps you busy for kind of a long period of
true.
time on like an 8-hour flight without completely throwing everything out the window. But you can find things like I'm in Orlando, so the Orlando airport has a Chick-fil-A. One of the easiest things to get if you're in a hurry is a 12 count grilled nugget meal and a fruit cup. And the grilled nuggets have, I think, 42 grams of protein with like 6
Oh,
grams of
wow.
fat. Yeah, it's a very macro friendly option. So that tends to be some of the things I sort of give to clients as ideas to stay on track while they're traveling. What are some ones
Yeah,
you've done of use? Because you're always on the go, it sounds
yeah,
like.
one thing is, like, Subway, the sandwich shop, right?
Hmm.
Um, is I
That's on
would
my
get
list too, actually.
because I have to be on a low carb, high protein one.
Hmm.
I do, the flatbread 'cause
Okay.
it's less carbs, but then
Is
I
less carbs, yeah.
double the protein, right?
Hmm.
So, I'd be like, turkey breast extra, because
Right.
they'll do 1 serving, and I'm like, "Do 2."
Hmm.
Those little things, and I always noticed, even if you're staying at a hotel, they usually have some mini fridge, right?
Oh, for sure.
So one of my things is I always try and go to a nearby grocery store and
Mhm.
get exactly Greek yogurt or some sort of yogurt with and checking the nutrition facts, but
Mhm.
making sure it's high protein.
Mhm.
I go for low fat or 0 fat, low sugar, checking that, so because it's not
Mhm.
counterproductive, exactly like the
Correct.
Gatorade bar. Um,
Yes.
but making sure that it has as much protein and not as high fat or high sugar that replaces
Mhm.
everything, so it's counterproductive. That and, then I try and get those bite-sized, like, carrot sticks, celery sticks,
Mhm.
edamame, those kinds of just to have vegetables nearby because that's unfortunately the harder part, and it is the healthier carbs. Because 'cause you're right, carbs are everywhere. And
No,
when
yeah.
I'm limited and I was like, "You goddamn spinach, you're 5 grams of, carbs,"
Oh my gosh, I
and all
know.
that
And you
stuff.
last for 2 days in my refrigerator.
And exactly, but I was like, "I'm so hard everywhere, it's everywhere, and I love blackberries. You're 14 grams of carb." But either way,
Mhm.
I kind of got used to it, but those are the kinds of carbs you really need to focus on, and then the
Mhm.
croissants and all that stuff. So I try
Right.
and have that, and then those will not well, especially like carrot sticks and things like that,
Mhm.
put it in your purse or your bag, when you're traveling, and I this one I'm not sure about, but it is at the airport past
Mhm.
security. Buy those
Mhm.
as well,
Mhm.
to snack on, as well as the popcorn, because I've been on the longest flight I've been on for one flight has it been 18 and a half hours? And you're just
Oh,
kind of
geez. You're so
bored,
bored.
and
You're bored
you're
and
bored.
snacky.
There's only so much you can walk every once in a while, and
Mhm.
all that, yeah, but you're snacky, and so there's you even if you did have just chocolates and you're gonna get sick of it, so you might as well have a
Yeah,
good variety, right? Mixed
I agree.
nuts, that kinda stuff, but exactly what you were saying is when you go to a restaurant, and this is what I would talk to my nutritionists or trainers about, and they do this also, is, "Okay, I am gonna get, like, let's say, beef or chicken
Mhm.
or, that, with a side salad, not the fries, because I don't need it.
Right.
It's been a long day, probably had 2 croissants and all sorts of stuff. I
Mhm.
did not get enough vegetables and
Mm.
dressing on the side so that at least you can kinda control that. Um,
Right.
so those kind of things, and when I lived in, particularly places like, I lived in Senegal and Kenya and stuff, we're not used to the water. So they're like,
Mm.
ooh, or like in Mexico, they're like, "Don't wash your
Don't
vegetables
drink
with
the right.
the water," right?
Mhm.
So to this day, I still every time I see canned vegetables, I think of my time in Kenya or in Senegal or in Mexico, because that's what we would do is we'd get canned vegetables because
Oh,
we didn't
yeah, I
have
wouldn't have thought of
time
that,
to
yeah.
be like because we would carry 5 liters of water and carry it up
Mhm.
the stairs and all that stuff, but we have to drink it too, so we didn't wanna waste it on
Yeah,
cleaning our
exactly.
actual
Cleaning
vegetables and then
vegetables.
have to go
This
back
does
and
seem
get
like
it,
safest step, yeah, for sure.
and so then we're like, "God damn it." So we would just get canned, and
Mhm.
so I would literally just be eating canned corn, and I would try and read the nutritional facts. I'm like, "We gotta get it somewhere." Um, so but we had to make it a priority because even when you do have your body takes a notice when you do sort of only eat the, less than nutritious carbs or,
For
sweets
sure.
or something like that, you do feel sluggish and things like that.
It starts to wreck
You
things like
feel
your sleep if you don't have
it does.
any if you have so many processed carbs that you and also you're not getting any fiber that way typically, right? So
No.
things aren't moving as well when you travel sometimes anyway, if you know what I mean. And now you don't have any
Yes.
fiber in there also. And sometimes you're also dehydrated. So there's so many ways and it causes insulin spikes having all the processed carbs instead. I think one of the nice things about at least traveling for me, I walk a lot anyway, but I also walk even more
That's
when I
true.
travel because like I don't have a car, obviously. I mean sometimes you rent a car, sure. But you do a lot more walking. I have to walk from all the way through the airport. We had to walk from the airport we're going to walk from the train station to the hotel or the Airbnb, that kind of stuff. So those things tend to help. It's one of the reasons why a lot of times when I come back from traveling, even though I've been off plan or made some more
Yeah.
fun choices than I normally would, I don't weigh any different because my total daily energy expenditure is still stayed up because I'm forced to do some other type of activity. And that helps a lot too. That also aids in your digestion. But to your point, if you think about the things that you didn't get in the day and then you try to get those in at meals, it helps crowd out the other choices that we might have made.
Yeah.
So if you think to yourself, I don't want to be super strict about certain things, but I really probably feel the best if I have at least like 3 servings of vegetables today. And even if all those are at one time and it's some
Yeah.
giant salad, at least it help you make a pretty good choice in whatever that one particular meal was. And I also think if you have some control over the breakfast, like you were saying, being able to hit up a grocery store or even like a quick mart type thing, convenience store,
Yeah.
and put some things in your refrigerator. It's why I almost always travel Airbnbs because I'd rather have my own kitchen and be able to keep some stuff. If you can start out your day making some decent choices, you're much better to keep that train going through the rest of the day than if you just start off being completely off the wall because you're going to have the mentality of like, well, I'm on vacation. I'll just start again tomorrow. But it's just going to be this horrible, slippery slope of continuing to make bad choices. And then honestly, just not even feeling your best on the vacation that you worked really hard to go on. So trying to maintain some level or some
Yeah.
semblance of consistency, I think really helps in the long run.
And to your point about getting the fiber and the nutrition that you were needing, even though you're walking more, I did have a post that I was in Paris for 10 days and I was supposed to be on a strict diet. And I was
Mhm.
telling my trainer that I was like, listen, the crepes with Nutella avec frescas, the strawberries, that's
Strawberries.
that's part of the pyramid, the food pyramid, okay? And it's up
Hmm.
top, okay? It does not count as a treat. It's a necessity. He's like,
Hmm.
okay. And I had to have one because I have to. And I go to Paris every year. I walked
Hmm.
at least 15,000 steps a day just because
Right.
it's a very
From point A to point
Europe in
B.
general
Yeah.
is a
Yes,
very
agreed.
walkable place, but particularly Paris. And I still went to the gym most days for about 45 minutes for strength training, but I did have my crepe. I did have it a couple times a day, and I still lost weight. However, I did lose muscle and gain
Hmm.
fat.
Hmm.
And so then I was like, damn it. And he's like, well, hun, it's because you had carbs and not enough protein. And I was
Yeah.
like, damn. So it's kind of keeping that, I was like, you win some, you lose some. So exactly, I couldn't
Right.
be too strict. I enjoyed my time in Paris. I stayed active. I mean, literally every day, like 15 plus thousand steps. But my goal was to gain muscle and lose fat more than anything else. So I did,
Hmm.
I was behind on that. And so that's something to keep in mind. And I was like, oh, well, I should have snacked more on those carrots.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no, I guess. The life experience is worth it to a point too. But I think the other
Yeah,
thing is people always think that if their progress doesn't look like this all the
yeah.
time, that they're
Hmm.
regressing, right? And it's not. Your progress is going to look like this and then stay here and then it's going to
Yeah,
maybe down here. Like as long as you are still continuing up from the starting point or still higher than the starting point, you're still making progress. But
yeah,
there's going to be times where it levels out or there's going to be times where this week at work was awful for you or and just staying the course, it's progress in and of itself because in a past life before you started on a health journey you would have just thrown it all out the window and been like, well, I'll start again Monday even though it's only Tuesday of this week.
exactly.
and so
Yeah, yeah,
and so by the
exactly.
time you got to next Monday you're like way behind. So I think that progress isn't always a number metric, if that if that makes
It's a
sense.
good point, and I learned something from that because he's like, "I'm so happy that you got over the 10,000 that I ask you to
Mm,
do every day because movement is
mhm,
important. We get too sedentary.
right.
And that's tough when I'm back in the States and I work from home and I don't get to move as much.
Mhm.
But he's like, but now you know, keep that in mind that that's why I also say
That's the trade-off,
prioritize
right.
protein and stuff. You know what I and exactly,
Mhm.
and I learned, so I didn't stay like, I'm like, "Well, this went shot to hell," you know? So,
Exactly.
I still and then I was like, "No, I still gotta walk," and I still, saved some podcasts I'd like t to listen to. I'm like, "You can't listen to it unless you're walking," and
Oh,
so
I do
even
that
if it's a
too.
rainstorm.
I save, like, trashy not trashy, but, like, silly TV for, like, the treadmill.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, things like that, and, like,
It's
you have
mind-numbing,
to
I don't
do
wanna
that.
think, so I just wanna do this.
Yeah, and then I, like, douse, protein powder, with water or with yogurt that I get,
Mhm.
like, to 70 to 90 grams of protein every morning the first 2
Oh,
weeks I got back
lovely.
from Paris, and I
Mhm.
was like, "Yes!" Like, more
Just
than
get it back,
halfway
yeah.
there just to get back into it, and then when I went checked and then we're like, "Lost
Mhm.
fat, gained muscle,"
Mhm.
and he's like, "See, you're not far behind of your goal. You were a little bit, now you're back in track. You're going back," so I
Yeah,
learned from that.
and it didn't
Exactly.
take as much for you to get back to that. So I think the biggest thing that we should think about training from a mindset perspective is actually I didn't term this phrase, but is our rebound rate. So it's not the idea of never being off track or never taking a break or never just being in a maintenance scenario, but it's the idea of while it used to take remember the part of Indiana Jones where they're trying to push the big boulder and it takes like
Mhm.
quite a while to get the boulder to move because it's so big.
Yeah.
Eventually, once the boulder starts moving, it's much easier to keep it moving, right? So it's sort of that general idea of once you've kind of got some habits down track and you kind of know what works for you and you know the foods that you can grab and go and you know that you feel good when you do these sort of things. And now it only takes you 24 to 48 hours to get back on track after a terrible work week or being sick or being out of town for a couple of weeks and having to come back with jet lag. Where it used to be like, I'll start the first of the month and it's only the fifth of the month prior, you know? So like now your rebound rate is only a couple of days. And so you don't make those big backward slides where you have to start trying to push that giant boulder again. Now it's already dislodged. It moves a lot easier.
Yes. Well, I think that's a big part of, what we wanted to really ingrain in people, especially during
Mhm.
summer vacation,
For sure.
where people wanna enjoy their time, but then they worry that they'll be behind, and then they are like, "Ah, screw it," and also then the weather's gonna get a little cooler, and then you're covered up more, so then you kind of might be like, "Mm, it's okay, I'll just do," you know what I
Right.
mean?
You're
You
not concerned
still
about a
wanna
couple of
be
extra
healthier.
pounds, right? Like, no,
You
I get that.
because it all goes back to staying healthy and being able to walk all day and not worry about straining yourself too much
Mhm.
and still enjoying traveling and stuff. Is there something that, we haven't touched on that you'd like to discuss?
I think we've pretty much talked about all of the general sort of food ideas. I mean, I do like the idea of trying our best to stay active when we travel. So I know sometimes we get trapped in a layover in the airport. So don't take the people mover, just walk instead.
Yeah.
Last time I got trapped in the airport for like a layover, or not a layover, a delay, I did like 4 laps of Terminal A. Just anything to
Nice.
kind of keep moving around. I mean, anything to kind of keep moving around, those types of things. But all in all, I think that the biggest thing to learn about traveling is the idea that sometimes on your health journey, you're going to coast. You're not always going to have your foot firmly planted on the gas, and that's okay because your health isn't just about the movement. It isn't just about the nutrition. Those are the things that kind of help us live our lives. The other part of it is how we feel and the experiences that we get to do. So you never want the idea of being super strict, especially when you coach people, to then become a negative impact on their life. So
Mhm.
it's okay to relax a little bit while you're on vacation. Don't relax to the point where we have to start completely over, especially if you've
Yeah,
got
yeah. Going back to
you've got some pretty specific goals. We don't want to backslide, But my entire coaching practice is based on the idea is a habit-based approach. So if you truly have habits in place, they don't really matter where you are, right? So a habit isn't necessarily that I eat 150 grams of protein a day. A habit is that I eat a high protein diet, right? So that's something that's adaptable in other places. A habit for me is that I get in movement every day. That movement might not look the same when I'm on vacation, but that's okay. It doesn't have to look exactly the same.
Mhm.
So being able to sort of let yourself breathe a little bit, I think is also really important for your health.
Yeah. Well said. And
Thank
definitely
you.
we'll be tagging each other, collaborating and sharing our
Yes, for sure.
Substacks.
And I would
But
love to
if
do this again. I'm sure there's lots of other things
yes,
that we can
so
talk
many other
about.
things that we can talk about. I definitely think one is adding healthier habits, especially for children.
Yeah, it's funny. I was literally just thinking the same thing because I know that you would ask me about that, and I really enjoy training teens. I train teens for physical training as well as for nutrition training. So it's something that is, I have two teenagers myself, and they both play sports. And it's not even just for sports, it's the idea of training them for life in the
Yes.
perspective of like I make a big impact on how these kids feel about food and their bodies, and that's really
Yeah.
important to me to do correctly. So I take that responsibility very seriously. So it is something very near and dear to my heart. And if that's something that you want to talk about on a future episode, I would love to.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you. And everyone, please comment and share, and we'd love to hear more.
Yep, for sure. Let's do this again very soon.